band merchandise. We're gonna be talking about the good, the bad, the bizarre, the trends, the business, the illegal, and I might even have a really cool announcement near the end of the video, but we'll talk about that later. Just so you know, before we get started, I am actually going to be going pretty in-depth on a lot of these topics. I'm gonna keep it fun, funny, and fast-paced, but there are timestamps in the description for if you want to skip around a little bit. Okay, let's get started. There is so much great band merchandise out there, but for every good design, there are plenty of designs that I wouldn't wear if my life depended on it. I legitimately hate text-based band merchandise so much. I have never once looked at a shirt design and thought, wow, that looks great, but I wish it was a paragraph instead. This particular type of text-based shirt design was very popular and very prominent in the early 2010s Warped Tour scene, where it should stay buried forever because goddamn it sucks. Also known as the varsity/impact font designs, these shirts are basically the fabric equivalent of being called a slur over Xbox Live. Within this type of design, there is a sub-trend that I like to call first name F-word last name, which is really cool if you're 11. And speaking of being 11, I think I actually figured out why I hate this type of design so much. They're just gamer shirts. I don't know why metalcore bands in 2012 felt the need to replicate this style, but they all did, and it is atrocious. And speaking of atrocious designs that look like gamer shirts for children, neon cartoon monster merch. This era of design has been analyzed like crazy, so I'm gonna keep it brief. The main goal of these shirts was to look like a Nickelodeon bumper on acid, which I totally respect the concept, but in execution, it just looks a little ugly. I find the style of shirt very interesting because I don't think it ever fully went away. You'll still see plenty of shirts that are very reminiscent of this era's themes and color schemes, but just taking itself a little bit more seriously illustration-wise and being less cartoony. Although I don't think it's the same, I would still consider shirts like these to be direct descendants from this era of band merchandise. There's also what I like to call Hollister designs, which have a very college football type font with a circle in the middle, and the circle is always surrounded by symmetrical clip art of lines, ribbons, arrows, and wreath branches, mostly just as visual padding. It's somehow both minimalistic looking and a visual mess simultaneously, and I don't know how that's even possible. These shirts give off like a Christian mom type vibe despite being core merch, so I don't really know who the target demo is for this. And lastly is the more modern hypebeast style of design, which I don't think that there's anything wrong with per se, I just personally find it to be kind of ugly. I think this style of merchandise is just the updated version of the gold foil designs from the early 2000s. It's kind of cool, but at the same time, it's just a very specific aesthetic that just doesn't appeal to me personally. Also, Behemoth has got to have some of the tackiest merch I've ever seen in my life, bro. This looks like it comes pre-sprayed with Axe body spray, doesn't it? These shirts just scream creepy 32-year-old dating a high schooler. And like, you'd think a band entirely dedicated to selling out would make better merchandise, but you know, I guess not. But enough about the bad merchandise. Let's talk about the weird merchandise, because I personally find it to be far more interesting. There is so much weird band merchandise out there that I almost don't even know where to start. If you can hypothetically slap a logo on something and sell it for profit, someone somewhere has already done that. There's the standard novelty items like shot glasses, backpacks, grinders, athletic gear, scarves, underwear, and overpriced Christmas sweaters. But sometimes band merchandise can even come in the form of candles, caskets, credit cards, Funko Pops, energy drinks, toilet seats, really overpriced luggage for some reason. Motorhead has 3 separate incense burners, which I think is 3 more than anyone has ever asked from them. But there is an entire subgenre of weird band merchandise that for some reason, like, I haven't seen anyone talk about. I can't be the only person to notice and think it's weird, but I think it's about time that we as a whole have a discussion around how many bands offer food products as merchandise. From Exhumed to Deicide to Bad Brains to Bring Me the Horizon, it really does seem like everyone has a hot sauce for some reason. Tony has his own hot sauce. Doyle has his own hot sauce. Even though they're not bands, Steve-O and the Trailer Park Boys also have their own hot sauce. Why does this keep happening? Gwar even has their own barbecue sauce called Gwarbecue, which is genuinely adorable, might I add. It seems like every few months someone is announcing that they have their own brand of hot sauce now, and is it just me, or is that just like really weird and out of left field? And very similar to that, what's with all the coffee? Very similar to hot sauce, I feel like once a band reaches a certain level of popularity, they're contractually obligated to make their own brand of coffee, promote it once, and then never talk about it ever again. We've all seen it before. Even The Hard Times has done an article making fun of this trend. On one hand, I kind of feel like it's just a fun gimmick, but on the other hand, like, why is Disturbed making coffee? Did anyone ask for this? There's also a lot of weird band slash restaurant collabs that I've seen over the years that no one's talking about. This happens with restaurants like Grill-A-Mall and Kuma's Corner, where they have a Dark Throne burger, which I don't know if that combination of words is supposed to be funny, but it makes me laugh. On one hand, stuff like this is kind of stupid, but on the other hand, it's kind of cool. They even have a Portrayal of Guilt burger, which kind of looks like if an alien tried to replicate a human burger after only looking at it for a single second. They also got the Insect Warfare burger, which looks like the gross Krabby Patty a little bit. They've also done burgers for Wolves in the Throne Room, Gate Creeper, Artificial Brain, Power Trip, Weekend Nachos, I Hate God, Red Fang. There's so many. I promise this isn't an ad, by the way. I think it's really funny and also kind of cool. Sometimes bands will even have their own alcohol, which is kind of cool. I think it works best, however, when the band is more thrash related or has a very rock and roll dad type fan base. Bands outside of that realm, however, it ends up being a little out of place and kind of funny. Like, why on earth is there a deathcore vodka? Beartooth has a whiskey, which is kind of cool, but it's also a little weird considering the first EP was about grappling with the life-destroying effects of alcoholism, so it's a little out of place. I don't know though, that's just me. Let's move along. So, why does all of this keep happening? And does anyone care, or is it just me? Is this just like a fun, gimmicky merch item just to make money and have fun? Or is there some sort of tax write-off for food-related products that most bands aren't made aware of until they reach a certain level of popularity? Similar to how publishers and managers will always hound YouTubers for a book deal after they hit 1 million subscribers, is it like a similar dynamic like that? Or maybe it's not that deep and it's just the band trying to make money. Maybe a lot of hot sauce and coffee manufacturers are huge metal fans, so they're more likely to reach out to bands in the first place. I don't know. If any of you have any insight as to why so many bands do this, please let me know. Now, before we move on to the great and the funny designs, I really want to take a moment to talk about the iconic, noteworthy, and controversial shirt designs. The most famous band t-shirt designs are all the boring stuff that you'd see in the t-shirt section of a Target. Guns N' Roses logo, Nirvana smile, Rolling Stones logo, all that stuff. Although these designs are the most profitable merch designs to ever be made ever, there's just really not that much to say about them considering how bland and common they are. So instead, I'm going to discuss some of the most noteworthy band merchandise from the more underground, heavier music circles. Stuff that didn't launch into full mainstream territory per se, more so just stuff that caused huge waves of revenue or controversy within the scene. The single most profitable shirt Municipal Waste has ever made has got to be the Trump Walls one. Despite the shirt being pretty on par with a lot of their other designs and side projects, this one really took off the most and created the most amount of controversy. The shirt was inescapable back in 2016 and 2017, and you'd occasionally see people who didn't even listen to Municipal Waste rocking one of these shirts, so it ended up becoming its own little mini political statement that grew bigger than the band itself. But hey, they made a bunch of money off of a good design and pissed off a bunch of Republicans. What more could you want, you know? In 2018, Tomb Mold released Manner of Infinite Forms, and a lot of the underground death metal community really flocked to it. And when the death metal community flocks to something, that usually means that everything related to it will sell out instantaneously. Every single death metal snob needed to get their hands on one of these long sleeves. And I was one of them, because, I mean, come on, look, it's so cool. This was my first experience in buying something that was super sought after, so I had a genuine feeling of, oh my god, I can't believe I got my hands on one of these before they disappeared. And if you think that death metal fans going crazy over a 4-sided long sleeve is a little bit excessive, hardcore kids flock to windbreakers and hoodies like their life depends on it. A lot of pieces such as the Vane windbreaker can cause such a gigantic stir that people are willing to spend hundreds of dollars on it after it sells out within the first 10 minutes. This same thing happened with Jesus Piece's iconic Lamb hoodie and Gulch's Sanrio hoodie. This ended up having a weird side effect where, very similar to that of Supreme, for a short window of time, if anything had Gulch's logo on it, it would sell for way more than it reasonably should. Same with these guys for a short window of time a few years ago, back before their merch was easily sold online. Other popular and noteworthy designs include Converge's Jane Doe face, which ended up becoming pretty iconic. There's a whole wave of Defend insert genre shirts that were pretty popular for a little bit. There was also Sworn In's Death Card hoodie, which was super successful, but the band didn't make any money off of it apparently due to labels, managers, and agents taking all of it. Yay, capitalism. I love it. It's so cool and fair. Those were all the noteworthy designs I could think of off the top of my head, but I know for a fact there must be a whole lot more that I'm forgetting. I asked the internet if I was forgetting anything, and all the responses I got were stuff that were already on the list. So please let me know if I forgot any, because I'm sure that there's a handful. There is one design left on the list, however, and it is probably the most controversial and most noteworthy on the entire list, and you already know what it is. It's Perhaps the most widely known, most controversial piece of band merchandise to ever exist is Cradle of Filth's Jesus design from 1993. It led to arrests, bans, and a whole lot of upset religious groups. When the band was trying to get these shirts printed for the first time, printing companies would either flat out refuse, or it would only have to be done discreetly behind closed doors. The original screens were even given to the band because the printing company didn't want any evidence lying around, which is extremely funny considering how extreme band merch has gotten since then, but we'll talk about that later. But despite this shirt not being illegal, many people were still arrested over the years due to it being upsetting to old people. We can't have that. In fact, a shop owner was actually arrested for selling the shirt to an undercover officer on the grounds of selling obscene material, which in hindsight kind of makes the printing company look really smart for getting rid of all the evidence. Good for them. The shirt was even included in a museum showcasing 100 years of t-shirt design, but the display case was then spray painted over by religious fanatics, which is definitely the appropriate reaction to fabric. The years of controversy led this shirt to be the most popular underground metal shirt of all time, leading to tons of memes and even some celebrities catching heat for wearing it. And speaking of celebrities, people get like really mad whenever celebrities wear band merch, and it's always funny. I mean this in the most respectful way possible. If you get mad at celebrities like Justin Bieber for wearing a Metallica shirt that they got from Walmart, you need to go outside. Go talk to a human woman. You should try that out. Like, just get off the internet. That doesn't matter, dude. Especially celebrity musicians. Like, do you really think he doesn't know who Nirvana is, you idiot? Sometimes Kim Kardashian will wear shirts or jackets that she probably spent like $5,000 on to wear once. And in my opinion, that is way more funny than it is rage-inducing. This image should not make you angry. This image is hilarious, dude. Like, who's gonna tell him that those women aren't actually nuns and that they're probably going to do something really unholy with that cross in a few seconds? On one hand, I can see why stuff like this can elicit a negative response from certain fan bases. Alternative culture, or whatever you want to call it, exists outside of and oftentimes in spite of the pop culture status quo, so when the two get integrated a little bit, it can be inherently upsetting. But honestly, I think people need to chill out. These idiots are spending way too much money on a shirt to wear once. It's who cares? But hey, enough about that. I want to talk about some merch that I really love. Headsplit Records is amazing. They have a lot of genuinely fantastic artists on their roster, and also some of my favorite shirts I've ever gotten have been from them, so they're pretty neat. I don't know. Grindfather is great. Grind Destroy is cool. Blast Addict is cool. Closed Casket and Holy Mountain always has good stuff. Brutal Mind has some genuinely insane designs, so insane that I literally cannot show most of them on here. Isolation Man makes some S-tier boots, same with Lies from the Tablecloth, but my personal favorite would be Slit Wrist Distro. Genuinely one of my favorite DIY operations out there. Really great stuff for really cheap. Dispatch walked so that these guys can run, in my opinion. They got some great stuff on just about anything you could think of. Some really unique products too, like that disclosed toilet seat that I mentioned earlier, as well as some designs that in my opinion are some of the funniest bootleg stuff on the entire internet. In fact, I used a lot of this as like inspiration for that one video I made. I love dumb little funny shirts like this, and I'm gonna wear one actually. Hold on, there we go. I love this shirt, it's so stupid. But speaking of dumb shirts, let's talk about some parodies or rips or whatever you want to call it. Man is the Bastard has gotten ripped so many times by so many various bands over the years. There's this Morbid Angel rip by No Cure that actually goes pretty hard in my opinion. Sometimes bands will even parody their own merchandise, like with this one Harm's Way design where they flipped it on its head and made it way more positive. And despite it not really being my style personally, there is still no denying that this Nickelodeon rip and this Goosebumps rip by Paramore are actually pretty cool. These Fluid shirts genuinely made me laugh out loud the first time I saw them, and they look cool. Like, that's a winning combination right there. There's a lot of different aspects that go into making a good design, and one thing that people often tend to overlook is the font choice. And there is one font that pops up time and time again in this type of design, and if you haven't noticed already, I'm going to point it out to you and you're never going to be able to unsee it. The Arial font is everywhere, dude. It is a total frequency illusion. You don't even really notice its existence until it gets pointed out to you, and then you realize that it's been everywhere this whole time. If I grab my camera right now and walk around my apartment, I can stumble upon its use so many times that it genuinely feels like an Easter egg hunt. From logos to flyers to merch designs, this font is literally everywhere in heavy music design aesthetics. There's also Helvetica Bold, which is exactly the same except for the Q, G, and R are just a little bit more pronounced. It is a different font font, but I am choosing to ignore that information because, I mean, come on, look at it. The two are completely interchangeable. It just depends on whatever you feel like using. So if you're fairly new to heavier music design stuff and you don't really know which font to pick, odds are Arial, Arial Bold, Arial Black, or the Helvetica equivalent is going to do the job decently well. You can even find these fonts on YouTube merch. This is a clunky segue. YouTube merch is usually really bad, let's be real. Nerd City even did an entire video on it, which I really recommend you check out. Oftentimes, not only is it clear that YouTube merch was made as quickly and cheaply as humanly possible, but if you don't directly understand the reference, then it just kind of looks like an ugly t-shirt design. Sorry, Jack. So the best type of design a YouTuber can make is a design that looks good by itself but doesn't completely rely on an inside joke, like this really good looking Meat Canyon shirt, for example. Or you can do the exact opposite and make shirts that are so ridiculously bad and hyper specific, ironically, like the boys over at Super Mega and Cold Ones. They do have some designs that are legitimately good, but I feel like it's the so bad it's good designs that really shine the most. A lot of YouTubers usually tend to go through print-on-demand companies, which in my opinion have kind of subpar quality and cost more than they should. It's usually done entirely through the company itself, so the creator doesn't have to lift a finger, they just have to cash a check. It's a convenient and easy cash grab, but the consumer is oftentimes stuck with a cheap-looking, impersonal, overpriced product, and I don't like that. I personally would rather go with the direct, more DIY approach that a lot of bands do, pack all the shirts myself, commission artists directly, and only go through printing companies that specifically work with band merchandise. It's more effort, but I'd rather stick to my roots and work with people within the scene than work with a faceless Redbubble type company who just want quick and easy money. Band merch is oftentimes the lifeblood of a musician's revenue. One band t-shirt is roughly the equivalent to 8,000 streams. And since capitalism holds everyone at gunpoint and makes it so if you're not constantly making money, you'll die, a lot of bands are forced to sell out a little bit. And speaking of Spotify, you know what else doesn't pay well? YouTube ad revenue. This is a segue. I have merch now. Oh, yay! Printed by Pyre Press, one of the best shirt printing companies in all of death metal. This 3-sided long sleeve is legitimately so good that I cannot believe it's my first attempt at making merch. Featuring art from Nightmare Imagery and my logo made by Marcel, two genuinely fantastic artists. Every single tiny detail of their amazing illustrations come through, so it really looks cool to look it up close. This shirt will make you hotter and smarter and more interesting, and also what's other stuff? Limited to 100 because this is my first time doing this and I have literally no clue how many people actually care. So if it happens to sell out pretty quickly, yell at me in the comments until I do more because peer pressure works. It's on my Bandcamp right now. I might make a website at some point for future designs that I may or may not have already made. Buy it if you want, or don't. I don't know. I gotta clean up all the confetti. Alright, is everyone gone? Okay, cool. Making merch for the very first time can be a scary, intimidating, overwhelming, and kind of expensive process. So now that the fun, wacky, YouTube-y side of the video is done, I wanted to provide you watching with a helpful guide as well as some valuable links and some, in my opinion, very interesting behind-the-scenes businessy stuff. The rest isn't going to be near as flashy as the first part of the video, but in my opinion, way more interesting. I got some juicy gossip for you. People sometimes forget that making a good shirt design is not just about making a good design. It's about making a good design that also looks good on a person. It's a very fine line to walk. I imagine that Cattle's gonna encounter this problem based off of the artwork for their upcoming album. It has mixed reactions, but I think it's a decent art piece. But like, would I want this on my body? Absolutely not. This Portrayal of Guilt shirt and this Fluid shirt are prime examples of that in my opinion. The design looks really good, but when you put it on your body, it just ends up looking weird and boxy. This Portrayal of Guilt shirt is so wide, in fact, that it literally cuts itself off and says wrist fucky. It's a really nitpicky criticism considering that these are band t-shirts and not fashion design, but it's still worth acknowledging. There's many ways to circumvent this, like having the boxy design be a little bit more narrow or just by slapping the logo on top. This breaks it up and makes it so there's not an ugly shoulder to shoulder line. But once again, this is just really nitpicky stuff. When I first started kicking around ideas for this shirt design, I went into my closet and looked at all of my favorite band shirts so I could figure out what I liked, what I wanted to replicate, what I didn't like, and why. This Hacksaw shirt is one of my favorite shirts that I own, period. I love the nice wide logo that completely covers the chest and how it drips down to a very like stimulating illustration. This white Gate Creeper long sleeve has art that I absolutely love. This Sangasuabog shirt has some great art and some great colors. It has a very simple but effective layout, and the insane detail of these two shirts just look amazing. But you can't think too hard about the layout until you actually have the art that you're gonna work with first. Finding the right artist for whatever shirt you want to make is something you have to take very seriously. The best place to start, even though it's the most obvious, is just to take a look at the stuff that you like and see if any names keep coming up. In fact, just looking around my room right now, there are not one, not two, but 3 separate pieces made by Gutslaughter. I love her artwork, but her designs are just a little bit more suited towards high detail album artwork, whereas all I want is a simple merch design of a dude, so I kept looking. So I went back to checking out all my favorite shirts, and as you can see, a lot of them were done by Nightmare Imagery, a very talented illustrator that I've been following for years and has an amazing body of work. So after coming up with the concept of killer content and sketching out a rough draft of what I wanted on a post-it note, I hit up Nightmare for a commission, and what I got is so goddamn cool. If you're watching this and hoping for artist recommendations, I cannot recommend Nightmare Imagery enough. Genuinely fantastic stuff. Here's a list of some other artists that I love. You should absolutely go follow and support all of them. The same goes for Extirpate Humanity Logos, who did the logo for my Dark Ambient project, and Marcel, who did an amazing job with the Crust Bag logo as well. They have such a cool, unique style of illustration and tattooing that I think is just really awesome. Go follow and support all of them. They are so great if you're looking for someone to commission. So after I got the artwork for the shirt, I spent days whipping up a whole bunch of different designs and variations with different borders and like inverted colors and placements and a whole bunch of stuff. After days obsessing with every single design, I landed on this one and I am incredibly proud of it. So we have a design. That's awesome, but that's also only like the first part, because now we actually got to get it onto a shirt and do all the businessy stuff, and oh my god. First you gotta choose a printing company, which is way easier said than done. What makes it so hard is that you rarely have a physical object to base your opinion off of. You have to know how the shirts look in person, how they feel on your skin, whether or not they'll deteriorate in the wash, and you can't tell that from website photos, you know? It's a really uncomfortable situation where you don't really know what the end product is gonna be like until after you give them thousands of dollars. I chose to go with Pyre Press because they're the only printing company that I know for a fact makes genuinely fantastic quality stuff. A lot of my favorite shirts were actually printed by them, which not only means that they have a great track record, but it also means that they're the only printing company that I actually have a physical product to base my decision off of, which gives them a huge advantage. Plus, they specialize in making some of the sickest death metal long sleeves in the game right now, and that's exactly the kind of product I'm trying to make. So overall, it felt like a really good fit to go with these guys. Choosing to work with people within the scene who fully get what you're trying to do seems like a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised by how many bands just completely skip this step. And when bands skip this step, it results in way worse quality merchandise. For example, Motionless in White. Motionless in White has some pretty awful merchandise, I'm not gonna lie. Not all of their designs are bad, but it's still weird that a band as big as Motionless in White is putting out pretty subpar merchandise. Every single hot goth girl I know owns a piece of Motionless merch, but never wears it because it's kind of ugly, and I've heard this sentiment more times than I can count. Chris has even publicly stated that he's not sure how to approach criticisms on merchandise when it also sells really well. The reason for that is really obvious in my opinion. People love the band so much that they're willing to financially support them, even if the designs aren't that good. If they can make a bunch of money selling designs that no one even really wants in the first place, imagine how much money they can make if they make a good quality product that people actually want. If they just slap their logo on a good illustration or even do something gimmicky, it would sell out immediately and make everyone happy, but instead they're selling this. I don't get it either. Now, I know I'm being kind of mean, but I think it's a tough love that the band would really need to hear. Let's be totally real, this shirt looked like it took 10 minutes to make, and we can all see that. And for a band as big as Motionless in White, that is actually pretty unacceptable. Especially when the fan designs are legitimately way more better and have way more effort put into them than every single thing that they are currently selling. These shirts, you could tell a lot of thought, passion, and intent went into every single one of these, whereas these shirts, on the other hand, it looks like Walmart acquired the Motionless name and is trying to pump out as much stuff as quick and as cheap as possible. And I know that that's harsh to say, but like, you see it though, right? I'm not wrong. This is a great shirt that their fans would love. It's just a shame that they used a default font, which automatically makes the shirt look like it's something from Redbubble. They could have just commissioned a designer or an illustrator to make the same design, only make it look good, but they just like didn't. Granted, they probably saved $100 since they didn't have to commission anyone, but they also probably cut the amount of people who'd be interested in buying the shirt in half by making it look so cheap, which is an objectively awful design and business decision on their part. But why? Why does a band as big as Motionless in White keep putting out shirt designs that are legitimately worse than 90% of local bands? Well, I did some digging, and it's actually extremely obvious why their merch aesthetics are in the toilet. If you look at who makes the merchandise, color test merch, you'll see that they have tons of genuinely fantastic looking designs. But despite having a lot of designs that are good looking, it is very clearly not for an alternative crowd at all. And if you look at their entire roster of artists that they work with, Motionless in White is an extreme outlier. And I'm not cherry picking artists, by the way. You can go check for yourself. The entire artist roster essentially looks like this. They are comedically out of place. Instead of the band deciding to work with people who specialize in making the types of merchandise that their fans are interested in, they went with these guys who do a more like Christian rock festival type design, which there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. It's just that that is extremely not their demo. And once you know that these guys are behind all of Motionless's designs, then it becomes extremely obvious as to why they all look like that. This disappoints fans and makes them less proud to wear your merchandise, even if the band is still making a whole bunch of money off of it. I am not saying this to be mean, by the way. I am one of their fans. I'm simply laying out all the extremely obvious problems with their merchandise so that hopefully the band can fix it, or at the very least you watching can not make the same mistakes that they did. Alright, I'm almost done. Lastly, we gotta talk about money stuff. One of the hardest things to calculate is how many shirts to order, especially if you're doing it for the first time and therefore have no idea as to what the demand will be. At the time of ordering these shirts, my videos had a baseline minimum of around 4,000 views per video. Assuming only a third of those people would be interested in a shirt and only about half would be interested in actually putting down money and buying one, I think I could reasonably sell about this many shirts. And honest to God, this is just a coincidence. This wasn't planned. This is just what the actual math turned out to be. So that's the maximum amount I think I could get away with. However, this is my first drop ever, so I should really err on the side of smaller instead of shooting for the stars. And also, I'm not sure if you're aware, but shirts are expensive when you buy a whole lot of them. If I were to order 1,000 shirts at just $10 a shirt, which is actually pretty generous, that would cost me roughly $10,000. And I don't know about you, but I don't have $10,000 to gamble, let alone have $10,000 period. Because that's what doing merch is. It's a gamble. You're gambling on yourself. Even a really small gamble, like going with the minimum 100 shirts, you're still going to be putting over $1,000 on the table, and that is a scary bet. Sometimes you can even see when a band put a lot of money on a design only for it to be a complete failure. Like, I'm not even joking. If you go to Crown the Empire's merch store right now and scroll to the very bottom, you will see this shirt that has been sitting there collecting dust for over 10 years. You can tell that the band wanted to profit off of this hot new meme, so they probably ordered like 1,000 only to sell 18, and now it's been sitting there and they've been desperately trying to get rid of them ever since. Even though no one wants to disappoint their fan base, it is a much better business decision to have merch that sells out immediately than it is to spend $10,000 on a shirt that you find out no one wants. Investments like this are much less scary if you're in a band, however. I mean, $2,000 on merch is way more reasonable when it's split 4 ways. Sometimes record labels can help cover the cost, but as we've seen, that can occasionally backfire, so it's a mixed bag. You could also do pre-order stuff, so all the money stuff is completely taken care of right off the bat. The only downside is the consumer would have to wait extra long for a product, and that kind of sucks. I may use this method for future designs, that way every single person who wants a shirt will get one. You're just gonna have to wait a little bit, which is a bummer, but I feel like this is the best way to make everyone happy while still remaining manageable for one person. A lot of bands out there usually sell long sleeves for anywhere between $30 and $50, and if I'm being honest, I hate that. So I'm selling mine for $27 because that's just the price that feels most fair. There's some cheap stickers too if you want to like throw in an extra $1 or something. And I just wanted to say thank you for 25,000 subscribers. It's 26 now even. And also 1 million total views on the channel. That is insane. It's way more support than I thought I'd ever get, and I cannot thank you enough. Anyways, I hope you liked this video. Please consider doing these things if you want. And I'll see you next time. Bye. Love you. Really? What do you have to say about band merchandise? You want to tell? You have any fun facts? Any tips? Max, what's your favorite font?